uses and the criteria for those uses. There was some consolidation of the uses, and that was, and you'll be able to see that on the red line version. Those consolidations were only for uses that were almost identical. And then if there were any differences in the standards or the conditions for those uses, those were kept. So for example, there may have been one that said accessory housing, this is just an example, accessory housing for people employed on the premises, and another one might say accessory housing for employees, or, you know, so something that was or something nearly identical, or it's something that had the same meaning. So those were the only consolidations that we made, and that did allow us to clean this up quite a bit. So I also want to open up another document. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just one moment and open up another document. And that document is the comprehensive use table. So if you have that available in front of you, please open that now. And I will open it for the others.
And as Nolan is opening this document, I want to note for those who are watching and in the audience, this document is intended to be an appendix to the land use ordinance. It wouldn't be adopted as code. It's simply a reference to combine all of the charts across the code. But again, it would be planned as an appendix at this point.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, so the reason that this is a separate document is because it's not included in the code document itself, but it is a very helpful tool, and that's why I wanted to highlight it. So as you see here, this is page 1 of the document, Kent County MD Redline Draft 2022-12-01 Comprehensive Use Table. This document is a long table. You see here it's 16 pages, but it includes all of the zoning districts and all of the uses. So you could look, for example, at agricultural zoning district and say, I want to know all of the uses that are permitted in the agricultural zoning district, whether that's by right, on farms only, as a special exception, as an accessory use on farms only, or as an accessory use everywhere. And we can scroll down and see that aquaculture is a permitted use. However, automobile repair is not. Alternatively, you can use this table to look for a specific use. Let's go to page 6 and look at financial institutions. And we say, where can you put a financial institution? Where are those permitted in Kent County? And you see that there are 4 Ps, one for village district, intense village district, commercial district, and commercial critical area district. So this is a helpful tool and something that we worked on as part of this project. Any of these, I just want to highlight, any of these permitted by right, or any of these uses, period, refer back up to Article 3 uses on page 91. So if you saw, for example, dog kennels, you could go back up to dog kennels in section, or in Article 3. This should be in alphabetical order. And you see dog kennels, commercial. And so it lists some conditions for dog kennels. So here, such uses shall be permitted by special exception only when all of the following conditions are satisfied, and such uses shall be permitted as accessory uses only when all of the following conditions are satisfied. So there's 2 different categories there for dog kennels. Because as we see in the table, dog kennels, there's an A for accessory, and then the others are special exceptions. So these changes were made to increase the usability of the code. In summary, we added 27 tables, 30 graphics, and reduced the length of the document by 149 pages. I am done with my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for me at this time.
Thank you both. I think we're going to put it up to the public now, and then staff may have questions also after. Thank you, Nolan. We're going to open up to the public for comments and questions on both the criteria in this and other concerns they have. Is there anyone on the stream or on the YouTube that would like to have has a question or a comment? Hearing none, I'll take a hands from the public if they would like to testify. Come forward, please. And I didn't mean testify. If you have comments or questions, it's just a forum. Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Janet Christensen Lewis, Millington, Maryland. I had some questions or comments about the actual document that was just presented. First of all, in the tables, there seems to be a lack of between pages. There's headings on the tables on the first page, but after that, the headings disappear. So in order to keep understanding what it is that you're trying to look at, the headings are not there. You have to scroll back up to the top. So on page 15, there's headings across there, permitted by right, permitted, all those headings that you see. But if you go to page 16, 17, those are absent, which makes reading the tables difficult. That's number one. Number two is the graphics that you have put in here don't seem, and I mentioned this last time that we saw this, don't seem to really be very representative of Kent County, and don't really, even though, I mean, having graphics would be nice, they don't really give you much information. And I don't see that from the last time that we saw this document till this time, that there were any changes made to any of those graphics. And I don't think that I was the only one that made notation that they weren't of much value. I think there was other people that spoke to that particular issue. And then finally, there was a ask that the campgrounds be illustrated in graphic form for the Resource Conservation District. And I can't find that anywhere. I don't know if you did that graphic or if you could direct me to the page on which that graphic is present. That was a specific request that is noted in P10 of the comments by the planning or by the task force.
I do not believe that graphic was made. I do not have information on that. If it was, I apologize.
And then are we supposed to make comments on the actual task force recommendations as well? Okay. Okay, so that's what I basically have for, I mean, putting everything into the charts and the graphs and everything certainly makes it much easier to read. But I mean, it works really well, but I think there needs to be more work done on the diagrams. I mean, the diagrams to me look like some suburban neighborhood over in Annapolis. They don't look like Kent County. It doesn't look like anybody spent any time kind of trying to make it specific to Kent County and the way that Kent County looks. And I also don't think it gives you much information at all other than just being pretty pictures. Okay, so my comments on specifically on what has gone on here with the task force is that when you look through the recommendations that are put forward here, there's a lot of shorthand that went on when everything was, 5 people went this way, 10 people went this way. There was no real discussions that went forward. So as a member of the lay public coming in here and reading the comments that were put forward, it's almost impossible to have any kind of a feeling for what was discussed, what are they talking about? I mean, how many in the public really understand what a buffer yard is? And yet the recommendations for that under TF3 is that we're supposed to be looking at buffer yards, and there's supposed to be standardized landscaping means that was somehow discussed by the task force, but the public has no way of knowing what was discussed, why it was discussed, what were the pros, what were the cons. And that happens repeatedly in many of the things that are put forward here, is that a member of the lay public, unless they were following this procedure pretty closely, read this, it means nothing. That 5 people wanted this and 10 people wanted that. They have no way to comment on what is actually being proposed moving forward. There was many, I mean, almost every single one of the proposals was like that. As you go through, I mean, I looked at TF3, TF4, S3, P10, and then there's still things within the recommendations that were taken out of the task force and decided by another process and failed, and yet they're still in here. The 10% rule is a prime example of that. That was pulled out of the task force completely, and yet it still sits here in the comments section as being something that is being proposed. I will say that I was happy that the public has stepped forward for the Forest Conservation Act, that they have stated quite clearly that they believe that the environment of Kent County is important and that it should take a primary role, and that the Forest Conservation Act is a no-brainer. And I hope moving forward that that is a strong recommendation by the task force. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this? Yes, come up, please. Thank you. Can you state your name for us?
Yeah, Megan White and Chestertown.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, so my name is Megan White and I'm an environmental science student at Washington College and a part-time employee at Shore Rivers. Shore Rivers is an environmental nonprofit with over 3,500 members, and we are dedicated to the protection and restoration of Eastern Shore waterways through science-based advocacy, education, and restoration. Andy Richards is the Chester River Keeper and is currently on maternity leave, so I'm here to speak on behalf of Shore Rivers. And also in the room is Zach Kelleher, our Sassafras River Keeper. We are here to voice our support for the Citizens Text Amendment proposed by Kent Conservation and Preservation Alliance that strengthens forest conservation by increasing the fee in lieu for removing trees above the state minimum standard. It's a small change, but much needed to protect the forest and tree buffers that protect our waterways. Shore Rivers coordinated a petition for our members to voice their support to the Citizen Amendment, and nearly 500 residents, recreationists, and students in Kent County and from the Shore Rivers Network signed this petition. Trees serve as carbon sinks and are essential to the protection and improving water quality of the Sassafras and Chester River by decreasing erosion and sedimentation, removing excess nutrients, slowing stormwater runoff, shading impervious surfaces, and reducing overall pollutants from entering our waterways. Protecting and restoring our Eastern Shore protecting and restoring the trees above the Eastern Shore align with the Kent County Comprehensive Plan to embrace sufficient economic opportunities while working towards a zero net loss of trees. Shore Rivers also submitted a written testimony that includes the nearly 500 signatures from members of the town as well as other members of our Shore Rivers network. And within that form that also has individual comments that those petitioners, signers made. So I encourage you to look over that as well as the individual signees. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
So good evening, Chair and Task Force members. I'm Jamie Williams, and I'm the Director of Kent County Economic and Tourism Development. We've heard through these procedures that it's worked all this time, so why change? Consider decreasing population, revenues that do not sustain public services and facilities, and the perception, and I said perception, that Kent County is anti-growth. The lack of affordable housing for our workforce, a 21.3% rate of children in poverty. And that is more than double that of Queen Anne's County to our south, and almost double Cecil to our north, and the state average, and even higher than the US average. If this is what's worked, then don't change anything. Words matter and details matter. We've heard this quote many times as well from the comp plan. In Kent County, agriculture is viewed as a permanent and preferred land use. And here's the rest of that sentence: for the majority of the county. So agriculture, preservation, conservation, and economic development can coexist. Becoming a middle town is not a possibility. With Maryland water regulations, forestation regulations, wetland regulations, and the density within the county and the town's municipal zoning. That statement is used as a scare tactic. Sensationalism is what some folks have used to impede true progress, community, and economic prosperity for our citizens, especially for future generations. The comp plan's vision and purpose states, we must seek innovative ways to continue economic diversification. And the economy chapter states the county will seek a more diversified economy that will provide economic stability, better paying jobs, and a balanced tax base sufficient to support improved public services and facilities. The county has delayed and postpone many capital projects that would improve public services and facilities due to limited revenue streams. Why would Kent County not want to consider any project based on location and merit? In the 2017 Economic Development Plan and the 2022 Economic and Tourism Development Strategic Plan, support development on the US Route 301 corridor and the Wharton Industrial Area were stated. These are the only two growth areas designated within Kent County. We've talked about not allowing truck stops, truck parking lots, gas sales, convenience stores, restaurants with or without drive-throughs in the industrial zoning district on the 301 corridor. These facilities should be allowed in these areas when proper zoning and other state regulations are met. There are only 8 miles of 301 located in Kent County. And not all of that is properly zoned for development. So why limit project proposals? We have a planning department with planning professionals and a planning commission with the expertise to review these projects and ensure all the criteria is met. Shouldn't we be open to having these projects submitted and approved or not approved based on the merit of the project? Just because someone applies does not negate any zoning regulations or other approvals that are required. And I'll spare the list. We have a planning, sorry, already said that. The comp plan clearly addresses the need for economic development, and explicitly by expanding the regulatory flexibility, especially focused on the Wharton area and the 301 corridor. I asked before, and I ask again to revisit the sign ordinance needs to be revisited. It is still difficult to understand. There have been issues. I do understand there's lots of